Good afternoon. Are you ready for another marathon day? Good. I'm going to sit for a little while, and I would like to begin by just reviewing the universal applications of food systems management, or the global implications of food systems management. The first one is that in food systems management, that's probably one of the most important skills that we have. Remember, we were spending some time, was it day before yesterday, in talking about, or maybe it was even yesterday, about management and the fact that we use technical, human, and conceptual skills. So we've talked about technical skills last week. We've talked about conceptual skills in terms of management. But today we're going to really talk about human skills and how we can use human skills to achieve our goals of the organization. But I would like to begin by a rather long introduction that you are going to help me with, okay? You are the director of the food service, okay? I'm a cook, okay? So I work for you. I have decided that I'm going to resign. I will no longer work for you. I haven't told you that, but I have decided that's what I'm going to do. What I would like for us to do now, stepping out of those roles for just a moment, is to outline everything that needs to happen between the time that I give you my letter of resignation and the point at which you have another cook who is productive and who is doing the work at the same level of competence that hopefully I was. Okay? So the first step, is that I give you my letter. To resign. This cannot happen to me, can it? There we go. So the first step is going to be my letter of resignation. What am I going to put in that letter? What do I need to put in that letter?
The reasons that you are not...
Okay. So I'm going to put some reasons down as to why I'm leaving. I've really enjoyed working here, but I have another opportunity that I think will help my career path. And so that is the reason that I give to you. Another reason might be my wife has accepted another job in another city, and I'm going to follow her. Or the opposite is, I don't like working here. I don't know that I would tell you that, but I would give some excuse for wanting to leave. Probably advance my career is good terms to use. Okay, so I give you that letter, but I also indicate in the letter my last day to work. How much advance warning should I give you in my letter? 2 weeks? Yeah, that is a very standard amount of time. Everywhere I have been, a 2-week notice is adequate. There are situations in which the manager, you, might say, if you're going to resign, you may leave now. So I have just given you my letter, and you say, goodbye. It's been nice. Why would that happen? Why would someone, a manager, say, I don't want you anymore. I don't want you here. It's time to go. Clean out your locker and go home. Have you ever heard of that happening to anyone? It happened to my daughter. She was working in a company, a management company for her profession, and she did not like it at all. But did not put that in her letter, but she said something to the effect, I'm going to advance my career. And the supervisor of her said, goodbye. I will give you 2 weeks' pay in lieu of working. So here's a check for 2 weeks of pay, and you may leave. Is that a very sad situation?
It depends.
Yeah, right. For her, it was a good thing because she had a job already lined up and said, I'll start in 2 weeks. Well, she called up her new boss and said, I'm done. And he said, come to work tomorrow. So she got paid for 2 weeks, and then she got paid for another 2 weeks, for the same 2 weeks. So it can be good. My recommendation to students is never leave a job unless you have another one to take its place. And sometimes they are far and few between. Okay. You now have my letter. What are you going to do with it? Just sit there and look at it? Cry? Have a party?
Maybe I want to know why you want to go from our
Okay.
service.
So this brings up a very good point. One of the things that is very important to do is to do an exit interview. Sometime, if you immediately terminate or in 2 weeks, sometime during that time period, it's good to do a exit interview. Exit means to leave, and so this is an interview before you leave. And so this gives you an opportunity to really communicate with your supervisor the good things and the bad things about the job. It's not going to hurt you in telling them like it is, unless you want to use them for a reference. And so, you may want to be a little careful about what you say, but it is an opportunity for the supervisor to really find out the beliefs of the individual who is leaving, the strengths and the weaknesses of the organization. One time I was in a food service for an interview with the manager, and the appointment just before me was a young employee, and they were doing an exit interview. I didn't have any difficulty in hearing what was being said in that next room because everyone was shouting. It was not going well at all. And so I think it's good to have that exit interview, but I think it's good to keep it civil and to keep the level of conversation appropriate. You don't need to shout. But the employee who was leaving was not happy. You still have that letter. So we have done an exit interview, but we haven't taken one step yet to go to the second level. And the second level is to get approval to replace me. And that can be done in several ways. Probably the first way would be to have a standing permission to replace. So this would be an activity that would be delegated to you, saying that you have this many authorized positions, and so as long as you don't go above that, you may hire. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is, I want you to come and talk to me, the administrator of the facility, whenever you have an opening. And I will give you permission or deny permission to replace that position. So we have the both ends. Probably the real truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. But in many places, there is a procedure by which the letter of resignation, along with a labor requisition. And so this approval to replace would be like a labor requisition. Do you know requisition? Do you know that word? It is a form that you fill out to order materials, but you can also order a new employee. And so this would go to the executive in charge of your department for their approval. So the labor requisition plays a very important role in that if the organization is considering downsizing, reducing the number of staff, does it make sense to bring a new employee in, spending money to interview them and all of the processes involved, only to turn around and terminate them because we need to reduce our labors? So that would be one way that we could reduce our labor staff, our staff, without going through all of the problems associated with saying, I'm sorry, we don't have a job for you anymore. So the labor requisition will give approval, typically. The requisition then goes to which department? It will go to Human Resource Management Department. And that will then begin the process of replacement. It's not there anymore? So the Human Resource Department is where we're going to go. What is the next step? Step number 3. Human Resource Management gets this labor requisition. That would be authorization for them to begin recruiting for the position that I'm leaving. What is involved in recruiting? Have you ever been recruited? Has someone ever said to you, "Will you come and work for me?" My wife and I were talking about this several months ago. I don't think my wife has ever gone out. No, one time she did, her first job. She went out and applied for a position. And that was as a temporary secretary for a few months. After that, people have always recruited her to come and work for them. And I think that's a really nice way in which to get a job. And I think in terms of real employment, I have never applied for a job. Never, ever done it. I have done some interviewing for a position, but I was asked by the company to come and interview. But I chose not to come and work with them. And so I can still remember that situation where I was at the door of my major professor's office. And she says, "We're beginning a new program. Would you come and teach?" That was in 1970, a day or two ago. And so that's where I have spent my career, in that office. Anyway, but recruiting may be a little bit different situation than what we have just talked about. It may involve a recruiter going to a university to talk to graduates to say, "Will you come and work for me?" We'll do a full interview there. And so that's a pre-employment interview, but it's done in a little bit different setting because it is in the university setting. There's another aspect of this recruiting in that, you come and work for us, but what I would like for you to do is to fill out an application. And so you will be one of many people who we will evaluate for positions that we have open. My son has had a varied career in his job, and he has always had to go out and seek a job. And in the position that he is in now, it took him 4 or 5 times to apply for a position before he actually got it. But he achieved his dream job, and so I expect him probably to spend the rest of his life there if they will have him. So we'll see. And so recruiting may be a very specific invitation or maybe a general invitation. Recruiting may also take on another role, and that is a poster, paper that would be on the wall saying, positions available, or, apply for these positions. I get those frequently from other universities who are looking for graduate students or young faculty to come and teach. And so that's the way they find out about these jobs. Again, another method of recruiting. Then the last method of recruiting that I would suggest that we evaluate is that of putting a notice in a newspaper or in a magazine where we are spreading widely the fact that we have openings and invite you to apply for the position. It's just an invitation. It is not, you've got a job, but let's see what's out there. Many companies like to know what the skill level of people that would be applying, and so they may not have a position open, but they are recruiting anyway, looking for individuals that would be competent, that could come into the workforce at some later date. Not now, but sometime later. So the recruiting process is finalized now. What is going to be the next step? If I am recruited, or if I see that an organization has positions, what am I going to do?
If you are recruited already.
I have just been told about the fact that there may be an opening. So what do I have to do to really make my desire to be considered for this opening? What do I have to do for that organization? I've got to fill out an application. And so this application, I am going to give very specific information about me. My name, my address, how long I have been there, what my educational background is, what my work background has been, what special skills I have. What else? Why I want to work for this company may be a question that is asked. Are there other questions that are asked here in Romania that would be in an application? Where I have worked before, yes. Your employment history. What the title of the job was. I'm sorry? References, yes, that definitely is part of it. So individuals that would write a letter of reference for you or would talk to an individual on the telephone about the skills that I possess. So the application is going to be this step. Typically, in today's world, in my world, applications are submitted via the computer. You can submit applications from home. You don't have to go to the place. It's very easy to do. But these applications go into a file, and they are there evaluated by a specialist to really pick out those individuals based upon the application alone, those individuals that are going to be well suited for the job and those maybe not so well suited for the job. So the application file is going to be evaluated. What happens then? Those individuals that were identified by the specialist as being the ones that we really want to interview, those applicants then are called in for an interview. We're going to talk more specifically about what happens in that interview a little bit later. But now the individual has come in for the interview. Any idea what's going to let me rephrase that question. What is going to be to serve as the standard by which we would evaluate, or which all of that set of applicants would be evaluated? Would you like me to ask the question again? It's too convoluted. What standard will be used to evaluate prospective employees, those that have come through the application process?
Depends on the job. It's a job or cook job, no?
Yeah, it's a cook's job.
If they have a background work in this area, and experience related to it, references.
But the standard that would be used to compare my abilities to what you are looking for would be the job description. The job description is the standard. A week ago Monday, we started out talking about quality, and we talked about standards. This is probably one of those design specifications that we were talking about that really clearly communicates what we are wanting in that employee. So the job description is going to be the job description we'll talk about a little bit later on this afternoon as well. But the job description is a detailed listing of all of the tasks that have to be done by the individual who is fulfilling that role. And it is also including a job specification that is really saying, what are the qualifications of an individual who we will hire? Do they have, for a cook, do they have to have a PhD? And do they have to have 20 years of experience? Probably not. But I'm really interested in knowing the experience that that cook has. So we'll talk more about the job description and the interview, as I said, just a little bit later. So in the interview, what I'm going to do is to ask questions of the applicant. I want to know about their personality. I want to know about how really well they will fit into the organization. And I want to know what skills they have, probably in inverse order. But in any event, I'm going to try to get them to talk. The more I talk, the less the applicant is going to talk. So it is important to ask a question that is an open-end question. Not yes or no, but tell me about an experience that you had in which you were dealing with the quality of a food product that was unacceptable. How did you deal with that? So you get the employee to talking and to try to put them into your environment, into problems that you've had, to see how well they would really fit into the way that you do things in this organization. The next thing that I will do is that I will get all of the information that I can from the applicant and say, thank you for coming and goodbye. And then I would invite another applicant to come, and we would go through the same process. And we would invite applicants as long as I'm still looking. I still haven't found exactly who I'm looking for. But there may be 5 or 6 or so candidates that are interviewed. I believe an important part of this interview is that we need to have a list of questions on a piece of paper so that every applicant is asked the same question, and so that we write down the answer that was given so that we have a basis of really doing some comparison. After interviewing all 6 based upon the job description, I may want to re-interview some of the applicants. And what I may want to do is to involve some of my senior administrative staff. If they haven't been involved already, involve them to get their feedback as to the skills that this employee or applicant seems to have. In this re-interview, I'll wait for that. That's, I think, something that's good, and we'll wait for that. I'm sorry to do that to you. But one of the things that could also happen is that the applicant would be asked to prepare a meal so that they can actually demonstrate what they say they can do. Are we happy with that, or are we still looking? So as we look at all of these, we're finally going to come up with one candidate that we think will be just exactly what we want. In my environment, I cannot offer the job to that person at this point. I can say, I would like to hire you, but I cannot say, I will hire you, because what I've got to do is to do a health screen. I've got to do a physical examination before I can really offer the position to the applicant. So I would do a physical exam and a drug test. Is that something that your employees go through? So any kind of illegal drug that they are taking could be picked up in this drug test. Yeah, it may come. So anyway, once I have clearance on both of those, I get, say, a positive response, then I can make a full, unrestricted invitation for this individual to join the staff. Would that individual say, yes, 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 I will come? Or will they say, let me think about it a day or two? If they have gone through the whole process of interviewing and come out successful at the top, I don't see why they wouldn't take it. But I have had situations where the best applicant that I found has gone through all of the interviews, done everything so well, rejected the job. So, let's start over again. Go to the second most qualified individual. So now we can offer the job to the successful applicant. So are we done? No, we've only really just begun. The next thing that we need to do is to enculturate. You know that word? Bring that person into the organization socially. So we've got to look them socially. Oh, that's not right. I think maybe there's just one L there. Anyway, socially, But the other thing that we need to do is an orientation. And that orientation, I think, to the department should be the first day before you even get started. So you're introduced to people that you're going to be worked with, that you will work with. You're going to look at the requirements of the job more in depth. But you're going to be oriented to what the department is. Then there's going to be another orientation for the whole organization. And that may be next week or it may be several weeks. But this is an opportunity to really get to know the organization better. And then we go through a period of training. The training is going to communicate to the successful applicant what we expect of you on the job. This is the way that we do this recipe. This is the way that we present the food so that it's appealing to our customer. So, I know how to do the work or I need to get myself out of this situation because I just resigned and you're not going to rehire me. So the new applicant then certainly knows what to do, but they need to understand what's happening really within that organization. Are we done? No. Still not done. The next step of what we've got to look at is assessment, evaluation. Are you familiar with the term buyer's remorse? Buyer's remorse? Have you ever bought something that you dearly wanted, and you're really, really happy about it, but you still look, is there something better that I could have bought? Is that something that you can relate to? Well, that happens in human resource management as well. Might there be someone else out there that is even better than the person that I got? If so, you may want to evaluate this new individual, but you may also want to talk to this other person that you think may even be better. In my background and the situation, there is a period of time called probation. And probation may last for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, even longer, 6 months. And during that time, I can terminate that employee without any cause, saying, sorry, the job is finished, you're done, goodbye. But once you pass that probationary period, then you've got to have some other reasons for termination by which you have talked about it. And so, if you have a situation where you think you have someone better, you may want to terminate that other individual, but I would be very certain that this individual really is who they say they are and that they really can do the job. Typically, that does not happen. Okay, so we evaluate and we get through probation. And so probation is probably the point at which that individual who has replaced me is at full level of competence. Still may have a lot to learn, but still can produce meals and do the work that's basically necessary for the job. So that has taken a fair amount of time this afternoon to talk about it. But the point I want to make is that it takes a significant amount of time to do all of these steps. The question that I have is, I gave you 2 weeks' notice. Can you do all of this work in 2 weeks? Unfortunately, no. And so what do you do? It may take 4 or 5 weeks to get a new individual in place. So what do you do? There is a strategy that I would like to suggest that you consider. And that is to have a group of individuals that are contract employees, or casual employees is another term, that can come to work whenever you call them. Another term is that we use is on-call. And I would seriously look there first to see if there is someone competent in that area that I could offer the job to. And I could do that in the next few days, well before you are gone or that I'm gone from the job. I can have someone in that job. Then the process that we have just gone through could be used to identify another individual that I'm going to bring into my on-call pool, so that I always have someone ready, standing in the wings, ready to come onto stage, ready to work. And as they are on call, you can bring them in as employees to replace individuals when they're sick, when they're on vacation, and you can train them all during this time. It's money that you're going to invest in that person. But based upon your interviews and your evaluation of the employee, you think that they really may have the skills that you're looking for. So I really recommend this approach to you in the replacement of employees. Are there any questions? What we're going to do now is to start all over again. I wanted to give you an overall view of what the process was, but would like to take a look more carefully at some significant components of that. Okay, so this is where we're going to begin. We've talked about the global understanding. And so this is the scenario that we have just gone through, that I have resigned from your food service, and we have talked about all that will happen to replace me as a cook. So your responsibility and my responsibility as being the director of a department is going to rest in terms primarily of planning for human resource managers, for human resources. You're doing the managing. And so one of the things that I think is very, very helpful is to have a file, which we need to have anyway, on every employee. And as an employee gains skill and is really identified in your mind as being an individual that you want to promote, that you want to help to develop. That's one of the things that I would put into the personnel file, is to document evidence that that individual is the one that I would like to see promoted when that opportunity comes. And I'm going to use every opportunity to develop that individual. And then as that individual matures even more, I would look at promotion. Now this process may be 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, something like that. But where the individual employee sees that there is an opportunity for growth within the organization, that's going to be a feeling that there's a place for me here. And I think it's important, as we finished up talking yesterday about mentoring in servant leadership, that we really need to communicate to our best employees, what the future might hold. I don't know if you know it or not, but at the end of June, I'm retiring. So when I come back here in June, I will essentially be done, but June 30 is my last day as chair. It's a day that I'm looking forward to very enthusiastically. And my dean, my supervisor, has encouraged us in all of the departments of the school to begin a process of succession planning. We do things maybe a little bit different than what you do here, but I think it's important to look at succession planning to help to further develop individuals who can accept a top management role. The individual who will be taking my place, I have been talking with her in a mentoring environment as taking my place for probably 10 years. So, well before the dean said, talk about succession planning, I was already there. And so I began then talking to the dean, saying, this individual I think is the one that we want. And so today, there's going to be a formal vote taken of the faculty that indicates their preference for this individual, who is a member of the faculty, to become the new chair of the department. When I became chair, it was just a notification from the dean saying, you're the chair. And so I asked that he announce that to the faculty. There was never a question about that. The individual that will be replacing me, there's never been a question on the part of the faculty that Cindy would not be that she would be the new chair of the department. And so that has been, when I began talking about that, people said, oh yes, that's the best decision. And so I'm expecting a 100% vote, for her amongst the 8 of us. I'm not there to vote, so it's probably a good thing that I'm away. But in terms of planning for a replacement, that's something that you really need to do well in advance so that there are no lapses between the termination of one individual and the beginning of a new. Now, lest you think that I'm going to stay home and rock in my rocking chair, I don't even have a rocking chair to rock in. But I will still be involved in teaching. Next fall, I will have a full teaching load at Loma Linda. And I will live 1,600 kilometers away and commute back and forth on the weekends, as long as my money holds out. And then in the future, I will still be involved in teaching. I'll still do things that I enjoy doing, like traveling and teaching and traveling and teaching and teaching and traveling and that sort of thing. But so that is my plan, and the plan that others have. It's the plan that the dean has for me. He has asked me to stay on. And I fully intend to do that as long as he will have me. And my wife is agreeable to that, so we'll be happy. So in all aspects of human resource management, we really need to make certain that we have this process under control in terms of knowing when openings may occur. We're not going to know for sure, but there are some indications that things are going to be happening. One of the indications that an individual may be thinking about moving is some strange behavior on their part, that suddenly they're gone for a day or two, that, just kind of at the last minute. Or, there's talking going on saying, the individual, may be leaving. Or the productivity of the individual may reduce. And so they're already getting into that new job mode. I can see that in myself. In terms of work in my office, I don't have the motivation that I once had. So anyway, so planning is going to be an important part of our role as the management of human resources. And so we've talked in a little bit about forecasting the supply and demand of labor. One of the things that I would like to know, and we already talked about this just a little bit, and that is I would like to know what individuals are out there that have the skills that I'm interested in. And there are some positions where, you just cannot fill those positions. And so what you're going to have to do then is to get into this succession planning and provide for the development of an individual. I refer to it as growing your own person. So rather than going to the store and buying a new employee, I'm going to grow my own. That means that I am going to send that person to school. I'm going to send them to continuing education events. I'm going to give them additional areas of responsibility in which to develop, to really show me that they have the skills necessary to do the job that I'm having them want to do. It may not be that I have, let's go back to Cindy for just a moment. In terms of the fact that I knew I was going to retire, and I knew that she had the skills, but I have tried over these last 10 years to put her into situations where she can grow and develop. And she's done so extremely well. The other area that we need to look at in terms of forecasting supply and demand of labor is keeping an ear open to administration. What are they saying in terms of the growth that the organization may experience in the future? Is it a boundless kind of growth, or is it the other in which we're going to have a retrenchment or a reduction in staff? I need to know both ways so that I can adequately plan. Too often in my experience, we've been asked to cut staff today. We were told, in the next 3 days you need to come up with a plan on how you're going to restructure your organization and get rid of 10 full-time employees. Not a happy situation. So we need to have, 3 days is really not enough time to plan. We need to have a much longer planning horizon to deal with. I think that's enough in terms of planning. What I'd like to do now is to begin a process of coming up with the job description. This most important document that is going to, it's almost equivalent to the menu in terms of its importance within my organization. It is the design specification for my human resources. It's really what it is. And so the job analysis is, first of all, going to identify each of the individual tasks that are necessary. So in terms of developing a job analysis for a cook, what are all of the responsibilities that that cook has? That would be the first step. The second step is going to have to do with human behaviors. what kind of personality are you really looking for? It's going to be difficult to put that down really on paper, but you might say some words like, gets along very easily with people, can learn quickly, does not forget when you've corrected the individual. That kind of human behavior is something that we want to see in the job analysis as well. Now, in terms of performance standards, how well do you present the food to the customer? That's a performance standard. How well do they follow the production plan? Is that a good performance? Do they get their meal out on time? Is another performance standard that we need to look at. And then finally, in the job analysis, we're going to put some statements in there in terms of what are the knowledge and skills that this person must have in order to qualify for the job. So maybe one of the skills that's required is to have gone to or through chef's training in some kind of environment, or in terms of 2 or 4 years of experience, progressively increasing levels of responsibility in that 4 years of experience. So there we have the knowledge and the skills that are going to be required. And so this is going to eventually appear on the job description and is going to be used in evaluating the applicants that come. Now, this is a job analysis for you and me as food service managers. And so this is what a job analysis would look like. This is a list of the tasks that are required. Testing cooked food to make certain that it is correctly seasoned. It's at the degree of doneness that you want, not overcooked, not undercooked. Resolving complaints with employees, resolving complaints with customers. Those two are going to be part of my task, our task. Scheduling food delivery. This is going to be a process by where you're going to work with nursing, for example, to schedule when food will be delivered to that unit. What is the best time for them, based upon the kind of procedures that are being done on the unit, the way in which the patients are managed on that unit. So we've got to look at what is best for us as food service and what is best for the nursing service. So we will schedule food delivery from that point of view. We will monitor food preparation. For example, is the cook being the most efficient in the use of a knife? Something very similar, simple, but it is a skill that they need to have, and so we need, as managers, to evaluate the ability of our people to do their job. We're going to monitor the budget and payroll. How is our money being spent? Are we using all of our budget in pay, or do we need to take some corrective action to reduce the amount of money going out for labor? We're going to then schedule our employees, and so that's one of the ways in which we can monitor the payroll, is by changing our staffing hours. We're going to monitor the compliance with health and fire regulations. And one of the things that a manager would have to do is to record temperatures, for example, on the refrigerator, on the freezer, in the oven. Is the temperatures at the correct level? Are they at the correct level? And finally, establish standards for personnel and customer service. This is only a very, very small part of the whole universe of activities that a food service manager will do. But this is an example, then, of a completed job analysis, or at least part of it in terms of the task. So that set of tasks then are going to be taken and put into the job description without any real change. So the tasks and the duties are going to be pretty much the same. What are the responsibilities? That might be stated in terms of, to whom do you report? Who is your supervisor? And what are the specific responsibilities? This individual is responsibility for the production and service of the noon and the evening meal. Something maybe even that simple. In the job description, I always like to put in the working conditions. Have you spent any time where dishes are being washed? Have you ever spent any time there? Have you ever spent any time working in a hot, humid kitchen? Have you ever spent any time working there for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, standing on a hard surface? So I think it is important when I do an interview with an applicant that I really give them the worst possible scenario of what the working conditions are. I'm not going to say, it is like going to the Black Sea. It's going to be like, this is going to be one difficult task for you to do. And the reason I do that is I don't want that new employee coming back and saying, you didn't tell me it was going to be like this. So I want to tell them beforehand. I want to be proactive and say, this is the way it is. Standing for 8 hours as you work, your feet are going to get tired. You're going to be on slippery floors. You may fall and be injured. But still, applicants will accept the job and come to work. What I'm trying to do really is to avoid having to go through the complete sequence of accepting that individual as an employee, only to find that they're not liking it. In other situations, as part of the application and interviewing process, there are individuals that will have a new applicant come and actually be in the work environment for a full day. And the people that they would be working with will come and talk with them, interview them, talk about most anything. And so we would find out from that how that applicant fits in socially, how the current employees would accept that individual, which I think is pretty important as well. And do they get along, in that environment and working with these people? Is it going to be a pleasant experience for them? And then what tool or tools would they work with? What kind of materials would they be working with? And the last one is, what equipment are they going to be working with? Do they know how to use that equipment? If they said that they have skills in terms of Word and PowerPoint and Excel, but you put them in front of a computer and they don't know what to do, something's wrong with the application, something's wrong with the person. And so we've got to know that, I think. And so we're putting that in the job description so that we are going to include that in our evaluation of that applicant. And so, again, in the job description, we're going to put a section called the qualifications. We saw this on the job analysis, and so this is where it has come from. The knowledge and skills required. The physical conditions. Often our job descriptions in nutritional services say, can lift and or carry 10 kilograms for 50 meters or something like that. But it would be very, very specific in terms of what we expect that employee to do. So there's no question. And one of the roles of the physical exam is to evaluate that individual's ability to carry that amount of weight for that distance, to see that they really are able to do it. And then what educational level is required? For an entry-level position in a kitchen, is it required that they have completed 12 years of school or 15 years of school? Probably not. It may be that they are still in school, or unfortunately, maybe they have dropped out. And that's something that I would like to see happen, not necessarily requiring a high school completion or high school completion, but making certain that individuals, as part of their development, have an opportunity to go back to school, because that is really the route to their overall success. And that's how I'm going to help them to develop. Then we've talked a little bit about the qualities of the individual, and this is going to go into a section of the job description and called the job specification. So the personal qualities, their ability to adapt to the environment would be one factor. Their ability to learn and not to be blocked by mental conditions that don't allow them to learn or apply what they have learned. But the traits, the skills, those are things that they have said that they're able to do, but we need to really evaluate that. We need to evaluate their experience. And that can be done by checking references. Now, checking references is a ticklish situation. You're not always going to get what you think you're going to get. I'll give you a story. It's a sad story. Tears. I had gone through an application process with a prospective secretary. And as a part of that, she did a typing test. She did tests of all of the aspects of the job, and she came out exceedingly well. She had letters of recommendation from previous employers. In most cases, all that needs to be stated in terms of the recommendation is, yes, this individual worked for me. She worked between June of 2006 to July of 2009, and that I would rehire her, or I would not rehire her. So those are really the three minimum things that in most cases you're going to find from a recommendation. It's important, but I really would like to know a little bit more. So this applicant gave me a set of letters that had been written by previous employers saying how wonderful an employee she was. I have a problem with letters that have been written by an individual and given to the person and say, this is my recommendation for you, and it's, you can hand them out wherever you want to. Well, my concerns came true. I offered the job to her. I was walking down the hall of the medical center. I encountered two of the people that she had worked for previously. Remember, I've already offered her the job. And I'm in that period waiting for her to respond. And so I encounter these two physicians who she's worked for, and they says, and their letters were glowing letters. They were wonderful. But they said, under no circumstances hire that individual. Now, that's not something that's going to be put on the letter of recommendation that you give to a person to show around. And so to me, that letter of recommendation really doesn't provide any value at all, because it's not really telling me the truth. And I want the truth. Well, the story turns out very well. She rejects my offer. And so that made me very happy. And so I got another secretary that was ever so much better. And we spent a number of years together. The other part of the job specification that we need to look at is the professional certification. Is there a certification that is required to do the job? As a dietitian, is there a certification that is required? As a, in a medical technologist, is there any special qualification or qualifying test that that individual must pass? So that is going to be indicated there. Must they be a member of a professional association? Those kinds of things we will find in the professional certification. We're almost done with this section and we'll take a break, but I would like to finish up in talking about job design and quality of work life. These are terms that we used yesterday, if you remember that. But it is in this process of doing a job analysis and developing a job description where we're really going to make a difference in terms of the quality of work life of our employees. This is going to significantly impact their longevity with us in the organization, seeing that this is an environment where I am motivated, where I am feeling that I can grow and develop in this organization, and this is where I want to stay. There are two terms that we would use in terms of job design. And the first one is job enlargement. So you like your job? You like the tasks that you have? And you're doing a good job at it. And so in terms of applying job enlargement, well, I'm going to give you more of the same kind of tasks to do. So rather than doing this set, you're going to do this set plus this set. And so that is job enlargement. Is that something that's going to create motivation within you? I don't think so. It certainly would not in my case. I'm just doing more of the same meaningless work. That's the problem. Job enrichment, on the other hand, is a much more motivating situation in which we increase the variety of skills that are necessary. So I may have some other skills that I've never used on the job that I've had before, but now in this new rearranged job, I have some skills that I can use more effectively to perform my job and to do it well. Do I really identify with the task? Is that really me? Does it lend significance to my life? Am I proud to say that I am a garbage collector? I mean, that's the job title. I really would not mind that job, because I don't know how they're paid here, but in the United States, they earn very, very good money, more money than I earn right now. And so, the only problem with that is that they have to get up really early in the morning. But I could live with that as well. But I'm happy where I am. Autonomy. Do I have to rely on someone else to do my job, or can I do it all myself? And, I like being independent, and I can do a better job. And so then accountability and responsibility that we talked about yesterday are all here. And so I can then be accountable to my supervisor for everything that I have done. And that I can get feedback and I can give feedback because I do have autonomy in my work. So job enrichment is probably the way that we want to go. And so as we are building jobs or as we are rearranging jobs job enrichment is something that I think that we really need to consider and to evaluate as we work to develop our employees. This is a good place to stop for a break.